Hey guys, it's Lizzie and welcome to my channel. So today, as you can tell from the title, it's going to be another sort of career related video. If you didn't see my last video of how I got a job without an interview, I will leave the link in the description box down below. I feel like it's going to be a very helpful video for those of you, no matter what stage you are in your life, that's going through any sort of hardships in terms of your career, and some tips and tricks to sort of move forward and potentially secure a role, a dream role, or working with your dream company without an interview. But today's video is more of a personal video of why I quit my job. So not my current job, but a job that I had not that long ago. And I'm smiling about it now, but it was honestly the most horrific experience of my life. And that sounds very dramatic, which it is, but I realized that I'm not crazy and these things did happen, and I'm learning that I don't want to get myself in that situation. But before I get started into this video, if you have any questions or you're going through something similar and you don't want to comment in the comment section, feel free to DM me on Instagram. I will leave my Instagram down below or in this video somewhere. Just let me know in the comments that you've DM'd me so I make sure to check them. But I don't want this video to be too long, so I'm just going to get straight into it. Okay, so why did I quit my job? So let's start from the beginning. I had 2 job offers. The one that I ended up declining was the one that honestly my gut and my instinct told me to go for that one instead. However, I chased the brand. That was basically it. I chased the brand as opposed to chasing something that resonated with me more. And I will get into that maybe towards the end of the video about not to chase brands or anything like that. Chase your gut instinct. If her gut is telling you something, trust it. And I didn't trust my gut. I was listening to I was getting opinions from other people when it came to coming down to the decision on which job to take, and I ended up taking the one that was the bigger name and that would look a lot better on my CV, and I felt was going to propel my career forward because it was a international brand. Worst decision ever. So the first week I started, it was super overwhelming just because I was coming from a smaller company, and this one was really big, like more than triple the size. So as soon as I entered, it was already overwhelming, but I knew that that was only going to be short-lived, just because anything new that you start is going to be nerve-wracking and overwhelming, but then over time that sort of goes away and you sort of like fit in with everyone else. So as I started to sort of find my rhythm within the job role, I noticed that my colleagues were overworked. So I feel like when you're new at a job, they sort of take it easy on you because you sort of don't know what you're doing. Well, you do, but you don't at the same time. Like, it's the same field that I've worked in before, but it's a completely different brand. So there was a lot to learn. So I didn't really get much of that, but I instantly saw that my colleagues were overworked. One of my colleagues, who I had a really great relationship with, she would be staying at the most ungodly hours. We start at, was it 9 or 9:30? She would be there till 8, 9, 10, 11 p.m. And that instantly was like, whoa, I wasn't used to that, because I'm coming from a place where once it hits 6, I'm packing my bags and I'm going home. Like, and I'm not a lazy person. I work hard, but I also need my time away from work. Like, I don't want it to be a situation where the work consumes me. And it was evident that, you know, it seemed like the work was consuming everyone. Like, the fact that people are staying, I don't mind, you know, on occasion if it's like a big event or something, you know, everyone has to stay for a few hours. I don't mind that. But when it's like a normal occurrence of everyone staying, you know, 10, 11, 8, or like there were even times where, because you could sort of stagger when you started. So I actually prefer to start early and finish early. So I'd rather do 8 to 5 as opposed to 9 to 6. So there were occasions where you'd come at 8 and then like you're thinking 5, I'm about to head out of here. No, you're staying. So that was a red flag for me. But again, that wouldn't give me a reason to quit a job. That was just the start. I also want to touch on one thing that really stood out to me was the lack of diversity. I was the only black person in my team, and I don't know what it is with these companies, but there's like zero diversity. they'll have maybe one black person, one Asian, and then, you know, everyone else is white. And it sucks. And the crazy thing is that my colleagues were really nice people, like, except for management. The colleagues were really nice people, but there's just something about being the only black person, you feel out of place. And for me, I don't want to speak for other people, and I don't want this to come across a certain type of way, but for me, the connection I have with other black people, Asians, you know, minority groups, is different to the connection I have with white people. And it's not, and I think that's normal, you know. If you had a big group of random people, if you had Asians, you had blacks, you had whites, you had all these groups of people, you're more likely to gravitate to people that are more like you as opposed to not. And the lack of diversity was honestly atrocious. Like, I could count how many black people was in the entire company. Now in my team, I was the only black person, and I instantly felt just out of place. And it didn't matter how nice people were, I just felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb. I just didn't feel like I could relate to really anyone. I will say that my colleague that I worked quite close with, I did click with her, but other than her, it was like I just felt that this isn't right. There's so much lack of representation. And I remember one day they did a presentation about diversity and how they want to make the company more diverse, and it was just the most cliche, and just it was literally the most cringeworthy thing ever. And when it comes to race, I actually don't like talking about it in terms of in a work environment, you know. I'm working through this now, because I need to be, when you go into interviews, like, I should have been asking the right questions. Okay, so my memory card was full, so I had to quickly change it. So I don't know where I was talking about. I was probably talking about diversity and how there was a lack of it and a lack of representation. And for me, I want to be in a company where there's black people, Asian people, white people, biracial people. There's people everywhere. There's different types of people. That's the kind of environment that I feel like I would really thrive in. When you're the only black person and everyone else is white, you just feel like, I just felt that there was a disconnect, and there was just a lack of representation. And it wasn't just with colleagues, it was with management, senior management, founders, CEOs. Everyone was white. And I could probably count how many black people there were. Less than 10 in the entire company, the London based office. But within my team, I was the only black person. So then again, I felt sort of out of place. But again, that wouldn't warrant me wanting to quit a job. So what it ultimately came down to was, it was the most unhealthy situation, like the most unhealthy environment, very degrading, very lots of micromanagement. There was this one lady in particular, oh God, even when I think of her, I just like quiver, because she was hell on earth. There was a time where she would have to check each and every one of my emails, and she would change everything. She would be in different, like, we would be in documents. Let's say we're doing a report on something, she will be in the document, and she'll come over and be like, do you think that's right? Because I just did that calculation and that didn't, you know, come up or something. She would always undermine me. She wanted any moment to throw you under the bus. Let's say, for example, the colleague was called, let me give her a random name, Holly. Her name isn't Holly, but I just don't want to be saying people's names out here. So let's say her name was Holly. Let's say we had this sort of Teams chat. So let's say she will say to me, oh Lizzie, could you send this email to the client because she's been chasing, for example. This woman, let's call her B would come and literally be like, oh, why hasn't this been sent? This should have been done. Like, coming out of nowhere, wouldn't have understood the situation. It had nothing to do with her, but she wants every moment to throw you under the bus. And it would always be in a chat where senior management would be in that chat, and then they would have to come on with their 2 cents about, oh, this should have been done, and everyone's, you know, complaining, and they were just escalating things to a degree that it didn't need to be. She was honestly, like, the microaggression, like, I was so scared to make a mistake. Like, if I send an email, I'm reading that email 30 times. Like, an email that should take me maybe 5 minutes was taking me 20, 25 minutes. half an hour because they instilled so much fear that you cannot make the mistake. However, the client was low-key crazy. The client was very demanding, I guess because they're paying a lot of money, but that doesn't warrant the way that they treated us. And for me personally, that lady, she started I think 3 months before me, and she wasn't even my line manager, but for some reason she wanted to take me under her wing, and it was always her that was, you know, coming at me, complaining about things, micromanaging, you know, just being so, it was honestly the most horrible thing ever. And the funny thing is, in that moment, I thought, like, maybe I'm sensitive, because I'm quite a sensitive person when it comes to, like, in a work environment. I'm pretty sensitive just because, like, I want to do a good job and I get nervous, I'm overthinking things. So I thought maybe it's me overreacting. But then months later I realized, you know what, I don't want to say she was racist, but the way she treated me was absolutely horrendous. And I remember there was a guy who was a graphic designer, and they got me to create some assets as well. And so my assets and his assets were sent to the client. The client came back with feedback, loved my work, didn't love his work. He was obviously quite bummed about it because, like, he's the graphic designer, that's his job, and they didn't like it, and they liked my work, who I'm not the graphic designer in here. So I saw the amount of support that same woman gave him. She hugged him, she was like, oh, don't worry, sometimes the clients are like that. She just supported him when the clients just thrashed his work. And I remember her saying to me, oh, well, at least they liked yours. And I'm thinking, like, where is my applause? Like, they liked my work, and that's not even my job to do. And that was just little things like that, you know. There was just a lack of support, lots of microaggression, lots of micromanaging, and ultimately I feel like my mental health was more important, and I hated going into work. Like, I dreaded it. When it was Saturday, I'd be so excited. By Sunday, I'm thinking about Monday, thinking, oh my God, I have to end up in this hell, you know. And it just wasn't healthy at all. And so I basically made the decision to be like, listen, I'm out of here. I can't do it. And things, I'm laughing at it now, but like, when in that moment, honestly, like, I could seriously cry. It was terrible. And so now moving forward, you know, I know that if I go, and this is what sort of my mentor is teaching me, is that moving forward I need to be more mindful about the questions that I ask them in interviews. If something's off, I should take that as alarm bells. A lot of times we chase the brand. Like I said, I had 2 job offers. I took this one just because it was a bigger brand. It was an international brand. On your CV, it would look great, the type of client that it was, in comparison to the job that I declined. And in reality, I probably should have taken that other job. Although everything happens for a reason, and maybe that other job could have been just as bad. But ultimately, this has really taught me that, you know, I need to have boundaries and expectations and know what I will and will not tolerate. So going forward, if I go to future interviews, I need to be asking all the right questions. And if they say anything that's a bit off, I'd be like, oh no, you know, I need to be asking about diversity. Like, do you have any black CEOs? Although, you know, my only fear is that when you start asking those type of questions, you're seen as this like angry black person that's super aggressive, that's confrontational, which is not me. But I'm learning that there's ways to put it in a respectful way. And, you know, a lot of times when you ask questions about diversity to an all-white panel, they feel very uncomfortable. They don't know how to answer certain questions. And so I think your mental health is more important. And I feel like if I had stayed for, let's say I stayed for like a year, my confidence would have been like this. It would have been so low because they would have crushed it. They instilled so much fear in me. I was so scared to write an email. Honestly, it was terrible. And so if you're watching this right now and you're in a similar situation where you are experiencing microaggression, you know, you're experiencing, you know, racial biases, prejudice, micromanagement, all these things, and you know it's not right for your mental health, you need to start taking steps to get yourself out of that situation. I did not stay very long because honestly, I couldn't do it. It was not a healthy environment for me, and just the lack of support overall. So I say this to say, mental health is important. However, everyone needs a job, everyone wants money, everyone wants nice and lavish and beautiful things, but at the same time your mental health is just as important, and your confidence is important. If you have a job that's degrading you and making you feel so small, when you move on to your next job or your next career, you know, it's going to be a harder transition, because you're so used to being, you know, you're so used to feeling small. And so even till this day, I am working towards gaining that confidence back, and trying to get past that, honestly, trauma, low-key PTSD. Because anytime let's say I'm looking for a new job or anything, you know, I'm thinking so many things are running through my mind, because I do not want to end up in that same situation. But I also need to make sure that when I'm going to interviews, when I'm talking to people, that I need to be asking the right questions, because a lot of times you get so desperate and you just take whatever comes your way. So I'm going to end this off with, if you can say yes to some of these questions, then it's probably time that you start moving on to a different career or a different job. So how do you know when it's time to leave? So one, if you wake up in the morning dreading to go to work, let me tell you, on Sundays, I couldn't even enjoy Sundays, because I'd be thinking about Monday and how dreadful it was going to be, and how I would get there at 9, most likely wouldn't be able to leave by 6, you know, dreading it, absolutely. Sundays are filled with anxiety, anticipating the week and what the week ahead will look like. That's exactly me. Again, I'm an overthinker. I'm working on that. I get super anxious because I'm constantly thinking things that could go wrong, and so I'm already like scanning and planning things ahead in the week on a Sunday, nervous as hell about different scenarios that may come up, if I may have done something wrong, if they're going to complain about something. All of those things are red flags. If you're afraid, if you have anxiety and you're afraid to speak to your line manager, my line manager was actually not that bad. But the problem is that she was super close to the lady that was giving me pure hell. And so there was no way I could confide in her and be like, hey, this woman is crazy and she is making my life a living hell. And so I couldn't really confide in her. And then I remember when I did my exit interview, they said, you know, why don't you come to HR? And I'm like, what could I have said in HR? Like, you guys have no diversity. You guys, you know, are overworked. You guys, there's too much pressure. Your clients are absolutely crazy. Your clients don't care about you. You know, what could I have said? And I feel like the moment I would have spoken to HR, they would have known that I wasn't happy, and it would have been an awkward situation, because although the company's big, our team wasn't big at all. So it would have been a very awkward situation. Another thing is, you have no motivation and you're not motivated to try. In the beginning, I was super motivated, and I knew it was time to leave when I seriously got to the point where I didn't care. Like, I would send an email and I'd be like, I don't even care if there's a spelling mistake in here. Like, I wasn't motivated. And for me, like, I'm very much productive during my working hours, but like I said, a lot of times you are staying till really, really late, and my brain has been on overload, or I haven't had my lunch break. So I wasn't motivated, and I didn't want to be motivated because I didn't enjoy what I was doing. Also, there's no growth, personal development, or ongoing stability. During my interview, this woman was telling me all the amazing things I wanted to hear. She was like, oh yes, we could do this. Oh, you're really creative. We can get you on training courses. Like, they sent me, prior to me accepting the job, they knew that I had a job offer from somewhere else. They sent me, it was like 2 pages long of all the benefits that I could get, all the courses I could go on. And for me, personal development is really important. You never want to stay stagnant in a job. You want to be able to go on courses. You want to be able to do things. You want to be able to move up the ladder. And I remember asking her, like, oh, is there opportunities to move forward and this, that, and the other? And she was just telling me everything I wanted to hear. And the thing is, I think maybe she did have good intentions, but because the client was so demanding and would literally suck the life out of you, there was no time to go on courses or do things, or, you know, there was no time for any of that. And so I think she sort of sold me on a job that really wasn't what I expected it to be. And lastly, I wanted to say unhealthy work environment and lack of company culture. Again, that was a tipping point for me. The company culture was horrendous. Being the only black girl, horrendous. Just not being able to connect with people. Senior management, hell on earth, instilling so much fear to the point where I couldn't really send an email because I was so scared to send it. And I remember the last week we couldn't send emails without senior management having to see them, and then they would literally change everything. A hot mess. So if you relate to any of those things I've just said, I feel like that's the time for you to start moving on. I'm not saying that just pack your bags and go. However, start applying for jobs. If you want to move into a different career, start looking into that. Don't just stay there, because that place will eventually eat you alive, and it's horrible. So that's essentially why I said deuces to that job, because it was honestly hell. And I'm able to talk about it now, but honestly it was so painful and traumatic for me that I've made a vow to myself that I cannot get myself into that situation, and that I need to be asking the right and appropriate questions. So I'm going to end this video here, because I have been talking for so long and my mouth is dry. But I hope this video is somewhat helpful to you guys. If you have any questions, discussions, let's have an open talk. Comment down below. I want this to be sort of an open field where we can sort of express ourselves and sort of talk or speak on things, previous experiences, because others can learn from them. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.